So over the last 8 weeks, I took 10 kilos off my frame. And here is the exact step-by-step framework that I use to get into the best shape of my life. Traditionally, you've been told that a slow and steady fat loss approach is always better than aggressive. But there's now a growing body of research to suggest that people who take a more aggressive approach in the beginning get better results in the end. Seeing a chunk of weight loss relatively quickly can drastically improve outcomes for people trying to lose fat. Because number one, it improves your buy-in and your trust into the process. Because if you see an almost immediate return in your efforts, how much more motivated are you going to be? How much more committed to the process are you going to be? How much better is your calorie tracking, your step count, your activity and your training going to be? Versus how good all those same things would be if you saw fuck all change in your first 2 weeks. The second reason is that it reduces the timeline in which you need to lose the fat that you have to lose. It's a hell of a lot easier to commit to a fat loss process if you're promised results in half the time. So many people never commit to losing the fat that they know would drastically improve their lives because they're told they'll need to spend the next 6 to 12 months slowly chipping away at it. But if you've got anywhere from 10 to 15 kilos to lose, you could easily lose that with a highly concentrated, focused effort over the course of the next 2 to 3 months. So what is an aggressive fat loss approach? Well, to me, an aggressive approach is anything that yields noticeable, tangible, measurable, and significant changes within the first week. This can be achieved by dropping calories a little bit lower than most sustainable fat loss coaches would recommend, which in my case, having a maintenance calories of 3,200, I drop my calories to 2,500 per day, and sometimes even eating a little bit less than that if I felt as though I could manage it. While most people will start their fat loss phase 300 to 500 calories below their maintenance, I'm more inclined to recommend somewhere between 500 to 700. Now, if your maintenance calories is 1,800, dropping to 1,100 is probably a little bit extreme. But if you have a maintenance like mine of over 3,000 calories, you could easily get away with dropping your calories to 2,300 or maybe even 2,400. So it depends on the person, and it aims to blend an approach that maximizes the amount of fat that you can lose while still being enough calories that you can sustain for a couple of weeks. To save you the guesswork in figuring out the amount of calories that you need to consume to follow an aggressive fat loss approach, I've left a calculator in the description of this video. But before you go, there are some key things that you will need to consider if you do decide to follow an aggressive approach. The first thing is that you will need to make better food choices, because when you're working with lower calories, you're going to find yourself a little bit hungrier than you otherwise would. And this hunger will be a hell of a lot worse if you're making generally poor nutritional decisions across the course of a day. So if you fill up your calories with junk, don't be surprised if you can't stick to it. Prioritize a solid protein intake of somewhere north of 1.5 grams per kg of your ideal body weight, while incorporating more fruit, more veg, more fiber, and more whole grains. It's going to be super important that you are intentional with every meal that you consume, that you know what you're having, you plan it out, and you make the best available choices that you can. Make choices that will leave you feeling a lot fuller for a lot longer, rather than resorting to convenient, calorie-dense, and unsatiating options that will only leave you chewing on the corner of the coffee table. Foods like Greek yogurt, oats, fruit, veg, lean meats, eggs, and baby potatoes are all going to be your best friend when trying to lose fat aggressively. The second thing to consider is that you are going to be hungry. Hunger when you diet is completely normal. After all, you are intentionally underfeeding your body. Now, hunger will be more prominent when you are aggressively dieting. Maybe not in the first few weeks, but more so as the weeks and months progress. Be prepared. Have a cup of coffee or 3, make sure you're getting enough sleep at night, and try to keep your meal times as consistent as possible from one day to the next. Trust me, it helps. Oh, and by the way, if you find a full day of eating that leaves you relatively full and that you can see yourself sustaining, then fucking stick to it. And never forget that you don't have to lose all the fat that you have to lose in one single effort. You can take it in blocks, you can take it in stages. You can sprint for the next 4 weeks, take off as much fat as you possibly can, go on holidays and revert back to a more relaxed, maintenance style approach before hitting the ground running again once you're home. You do not need to torture yourself for the next 3, 4, 5, or 6 months straight. You can work with your schedule, work with your calendar, and do everything to prioritize your fat loss on those weeks where you can afford to do so. And on those weeks where life gets busy, or work gets in the way, or you just can't track your calories as well. then this might be a good time to go back to maintenance. One of people's biggest fears when it comes to following an aggressive fat loss approach is somehow losing all their muscle and all their strength in the gym. But for most people, especially in the earlier stages of dieting, this really shouldn't be a concern. Even though you are in a substantial calorie deficit, all that extra body fat that you have on your frame will act as the fuel that you need to continue showing up to the gym and continue progressively overloading. It's only in those later stages of dieting, when things start to look silly lean, where you are nutritionally and physically depleted, is where you might have a hard time adding extra weight and reps to the bar. But even in the depths of a diet, you can offset this impact to a degree by having a well-planned meal 1.5 to 2.5 hours before you train, and/or a carbohydrate-based snack 30 to 60 minutes before your session. When people go from a bulk to a cut, they have this tendency to completely switch up their training program. But in the vast majority of cases, what successfully built muscle in a bulk will be exactly what maintains muscle in a cut. You shouldn't change up the structure, the layout, or even your exercise selection just because you're now consuming less calories. But one major thing that I implemented over the course of my 8-week cut was to slightly reduce the overall amount of sets that I was performing per muscle group in each and every session that I did. Instead of doing 3 to 4 sets per exercise, like I would typically do if I was bulking and had lots of energy, I reduced my working volume to just 2 sets. This is because the amount of sets that you need to maintain muscle mass is a lot less than the amount of sets that you need to build it. And having less overall sets to do per muscle per workout, especially as I got deeper into my deficit, allowed me to perform at my best for a handful of sets without my energy levels and my glycogen stores dropping through the floor. So while you should follow more or less the exact same program that did so well for you when building muscle and strength, it might help in some cases to slightly reduce the overall amount of sets that you were doing. And within those sets, try to prioritize lifting heavier weight for a slightly lower amount of repetitions per set. When it comes to the individuals who see the most success on an aggressive fat loss phase, it is indisputable that those with the higher level of general activity are the ones who lose fat more consistently. The more conscious or subconscious activity that you have scheduled into your day, the more calories that you're going to burn and the greater the rate of fat loss will be. But the busier that you are, the less opportunities that you have to succumb to cravings, and the more intentional you are going to have to be about every meal that you consume. If you have limited windows of time across the course of the day in which you can consume the calories that you have to eat, it's highly likely that you're going to have to prepare your meals in advance, which will likely save you a lot of time when life gets busy. And with all that said, adhere to a step count of at least 6,000 per day. And if you can do more than that, well then your results will be that bit better. In terms of cardio, I massively support the idea of including at least one cardio-specific workout per week of duration 20 minutes or more. This could be a class, this could be a run, this could be 20 minutes on a bike, anything that gets you sweating and has the ability to improve your fitness. Mentally, cardio can put you in a much better headspace, leading to you making more health-conscious decisions across the course of a day, as well as, of course, increasing the amount of calories that you're burning. It doesn't have to be much, but 20 minutes per workout per week is a great place to start. And that pretty much covers it. By following my guidance on how to calculate your aggressive fat loss calories, and including my recommendations on training, nutrition, general activity and cardio, you will be celebrating one hell of a fat loss result in a couple of weeks' time. So get after it, give it socks, and send me a message when it pays off. And if you want to see the exact approach that I followed over a 60-day period to lose 10 kg in 8 weeks, I suggest you give this video a watch. Adios.